Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Movie Fandom Show. I'm your host, Matthew Kearns. With me today, I have my fellow colleague here on Take 3, Jacob. Jacob, what's up?
Hey, how you going, guys? Pretty excited to talk about arguably my favorite film of all time. So I'm pretty excited for this, and this should be good.
And yeah, Jacob's arguably favorite film of all time, and the film we'll be talking about today is 1997's classic, because classic doesn't enter from 1930, Good Will Hunting. This is, for those of you who don't know, this is a movie along with Clerks, El Mariachi, and Pulp Fiction that kind of changed the indie movie scene and sort of showed that indie movies can be really profitable, and it's a very important film, I think, for the indie community. And so, Jacob, how did you first come across this film?
So came across it. It was 2009, and it was about I think it was about 10 o'clock at night. I should have been asleep. But it was just on TV. I was starting to get into film more and more, but I wasn't all there yet. And then something about it, it was the first time I just sat down. It was 10 o'clock at night. It was on TV. Sat down and I watched it, and there was just something about it that resonated with me, and I've always come back to it ever since. And it's always just been the movie that's just stayed with me the most. And whenever someone asks, what's your favorite film of all time? I say Good Will Hunting, because it's the one that changed me into, all right, film is something that can tell a story that I can fall in love with, and that can give me a character I've never heard anything about before, that is, Matt Damon. And by the end of that movie, I don't see Matt Damon. I see Will Hunting. And it was the first movie that had ever done that to me. Like I had, at that point, I had never seen Shawshank. I'd never seen Pulp Fiction. I'd never seen like these all-time classic movies that do what Good Will Hunting does. And that's kind of why there are better movies than Good Will Hunting. There are more films that I would look at and say that is a better movie, but there isn't a film that that resonated with me as much as Good Will Hunting does. Yeah.
Film is such an argumentative thing, and I always, just to go along with your point here, I always hate this thing of like, oh well, this film technically is better, and by maybe it has better camera shots, but I always say the emotion of a film trumps everything. The characters, all this. To me, this is one of my favorite films of all time as well. I came to this film actually because a very good buddy of mine, who I hope to get on the show one day, this is his favorite film of all time. And I remember when I first became friends with him was when I was in high school, which was when I self-identified as a real movie fan, and I wanted to start seeing a lot of different movies. And this was one he suggested. And I just remember one night I sat down, was on Netflix, and I just watched it. I didn't know anything about it, and at the time, I had never seen the Bourne movies. I didn't really. I sort of knew who Ben Affleck was. Robin Williams was really the only person I knew from this movie. It's the type of movie that I always remember the first time seeing it, especially one specific scene, which we're going to talk about in depth because it's one of my favorite scenes of all time. Yeah, it's one of those movies that I always find, like, I own the Blu-ray, and it's one of those that I always find myself, I have the exact same Blu-ray. It's one of those where, like, I'm looking on my movie shelf, and it's always one where I'm like, all right, just put it on. Like, it's just a nice movie to watch. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, I think the best place to start is, as usual, with the title character of Will Hunting.
So Will Hunting to me is what I love so much about the character of Will Hunting is, and why I think it resonated so much to me as a 16-year-old, is you're talking to someone who has the potential but doesn't want to, that has this potential but doesn't believe he should use it. And when you're a 16-year-old kid, and I'm sure everyone like Will Hunting was abused as a child. Now, I am not, and now, and by no means whatsoever are you to read into this that, hey, I relate to Will Hunting because I was abused as a child. I wasn't. I love my parents very dearly. They love me. I was raised very well. But the thing that resonates with me as is in Will Hunting is and why the scene, which is when he's saying, you know,
we're going to get to that scene.
We'll get to that scene. But the reason that resonates so much with me is I'm sure I'm sure a lot of people who have parents who said, I just want you to be, I want you to have a better life than I did. And that's something that I was always told as a kid and everything. And that it's hard when you look at your parents and you see, well, hang on, you didn't do too bad. Like, you actually did really well. And when you're, as a 15, 16-year-old, told, I want you to do better than me, and you're all of a sudden looking and going, like, sorry, you did well. Like,
that fear is there. I totally.
And that's something that always, and that's, I don't know, it was just, it was the right movie at the right time and that's why the character of Will Hunting has always stood with me, because there isn't a character who I can point to in film right now that I can go, he is who I related to the most at that time when it came out. Now, there are other characters who I related to possibly more. Tom Hansen from 500 Days of Summer is one that I related to the most at that time. But as I've grown older, I like Tom. I can see that. Well, that was a certain point in my life. Will Hunting, I have never grown out of. I've always gone, no, I can still relate to that guy. I can still look at and go, yeah, I can understand everything he is going through. And that's something that has always stuck in this movie.
Yeah, for me, the character of Will Hunting is so interesting because, yeah, I relate to him on that level too, of like when you feel like you could be doing more than you currently are. Like, you have the ability to do more, but you don't want to because you don't like change. Will Hunting is a person who is very set in his life and is okay with that. My biggest problem is I've always had a problem with change. I'm always, once I get into a groove, it's just like, I don't care what happens, you know, I don't want to break the flow. And that's resonated with me at that character of, you know, we have to sometimes step out of our element, and we can't wait for the world to change on us and have to rearrange ourselves. We have to change sometimes, and that's what sort of stuck with me. But the character that stuck with me for the first time I've seen the film all the way until right now when I watched it this morning again is Chucky, actually. Ben Affleck.
Oh, wow.
I've always found myself related to Chucky because I've never, amongst my group of friends, I was never the leader. I was never the really smart one. I was never the one who took the chances and did the crazy stuff. I was always just a really supportive friend. I was always like, I could be leader if they needed to me, but and maybe it goes along with that change thing. I was fine with that. But watching this movie, I've always related to Chucky, and the way Ben Affleck does not get enough credit for what he plays in this movie, because you can look at Chucky on the surface as just that supportive friend, and he is that, but there's a lot more to the character and the scene we're going to talk about later on that shows he is like 100 times more than that. And I think that's something I love about this movie, is that it does have these cookie cutter characters. The smart guy who is stuck in the rut and doesn't know how to reach the higher, platform in his life. The supportive friend, the good mentor, the bad mentor. But the Ben and Matt, who, if you didn't know, wrote the film, they started off with these cookie cutter characters, but as the film goes on, they start to peel back layers and start to show that there's a lot more of these people, and that's something I love about the film. So let's start off. Will Hunting is a janitor at MIT, unless
MIT. Yeah, it's MIT.
MIT. And yeah, and you go, oh, okay. And there is and we're the guy's name is escaping me who plays
Stellan Skarsgård.
yeah, Stellan Skarsgård plays a professor at this school who leaves this sort of challenge for his class and everything. And but then we're again, if I screw up any events, I apologize. I say that almost every episode. Then we move on to sort of because he doesn't right off the bat answer the question. He does, but basically we go off to the scene, I believe, with Chucky and the group at the bar and talking about going to the Harvard bar. Unless I'm mistaken with the timeline. Because the movie really picks up when they go to the Harvard bar.
Yeah, so
because that's where we're introduced to Minnie Driver, who is fan-freaking-tastic in this movie. Minnie Driver kills it. She is so good in this movie, and that's a great scene because that's such a classic moment of when Chucky is trying to hit on her and the Harvard guy comes up to him and he's trying to listen, I hate that guy. He does have that funny line where he's like, oh yeah, I remember that class. It was right between recess and lunch. And then we get this great takedown by Will, where this guy is spewing off information that he read from a book, obviously, and Will is throwing it back in his face. And then, because like in most movies, you get these douchebaggy guys, they always have to pull up with, well, I'm rich, so you'll be serving my family fries on the way to, our ski trip or something. Will Hunting in this moment has one of the greatest comebacks of all time to me. Yeah, well, at least I won't be unoriginal. That is something, because listen, I was bullied in high school. There's no shame in hiding that. I was not popular. I never played a sport on a team. I was not cool. I was picked on, not mercilessly, but I was not cool. Will Hunting has always stuck around with me because like I was like Will Hunting, where even though I was picked on, I never took it in that way. I was always the guy who was like, yeah, well, fuck you, you're a dumbass jock, okay? It's not going anywhere in life, and then, of course, we get a great scene with Casey Affleck, unknown at this point, who has, of course, which is crazy to anyone who's just watching films now, is like, well, he just won an Oscar. Well, at one point, he was just Ben Affleck's brother.
I know. It's amazing.
That's who he was. At one point, he was just Ben Affleck's brother.
Can I just say, I love that in that. So out of everyone in that car, 3 of them have won an Academy Award. One of them has won it twice. Like, it's awesome. Like, wow. But
that is insane when you think about it. But we get this great little moment when he's when Skylar comes up, just how Casey Affleck just goes, I swallowed a bug, and he just walks away. Like, I just love that. Like, he said, I swallowed a bug. Then, of course, we get the famous, do you like apples? Yeah.
Well, I got a number.
How you like them apples? There are so many quotable lines in this movie.
But
yeah, go on.
So, okay, so...
You have a guess?
So there's the scene, which is the scene towards the end of the film, but we'll get to that. But that isn't my favorite scene of the movie. My favorite scene, the one that to me, whenever someone says, why should I watch Good Will Hunting? And the scene I show them is the park bench scene, which is, to me, you want to see Robin Williams at the best.
Hold on to that for 1 second. We're going to get to that.
All right.
I tried to just run through the film, go along the timeline, and stop when we need to. I'm sorry. I should have told you that at the beginning. So then we get Professor
Lambeau.
Lambeau, his students, he's at the reunion, and they're like, yep, someone answered the question. No one knows who it is. So what does he do? He puts up another question, and he comes out with his assistant. There's the janitor, and I love the moment of he thinks that he's writing like graffiti or profanity, and then, oh my God, he answered it. Who is this kid? Then begins the search of finding who he is, and which before that, of course, we get the fight scene in the park when they just attack these guys.
Well, that's where the plot really starts.
That's when the plot really
so
starts. Is when Will gets arrested, and the movie starts at the courtroom when the professor's in there watching him attempt to get himself.
that is such a great scene. That is just
Yeah,
brilliant.
when he's attempting to get himself off. Yeah, go on.
I love that scene so much.
Yeah.
He's just like, so because of this, and the judge is not having a bar of it. He's just like, look, you punched a cop, you're going to jail. You're going in. You're going to jail.
You punched a cop. There's no way you're not doing time for this. Because I love how he reads the rap sheet of how Will has always been able to quote some law or some case or something and get off. And he's like, I'm not taking this. So then, of course, begins the new plot of this professor's going to keep him out of prison. And the way he's going to do this is Will is going to come and work with him. And they're also going to get him a psychiatrist, which begins a great montage of just going to the worst therapist in the world. Like, these are the guys who, like, you always see on which I love. I'm not sure if they meant this, but like one of them is actually preparing for like a TV event. Like, these are the guys that you always see, like Oprah Winfrey brings out to be like, and to talk with us, we're going to have Professor da-da-da, who, these are not good therapists whatsoever. These are the guys who are literally just there to make the bank. Of course, one of the funniest scenes in the movie, before the sun goes down, afternoon delight. Afternoon delight. I do not need therapy. And then, of course, the professor has this moment where he goes, there's one guy I know. And we're introduced to Robin Williams in, to me, arguably his greatest role. Dead Poets Society hit me. It's difficult because both of these films hit me at a very important time. The things Robin Williams did in Dead Poets Society when I saw that movie hit me. So Dead Poets said, this is such a close number 2. And he is Robin Williams in this movie. He is playing Sean McGuire, but there's so much Robin Williams right off the bat when he is just teaching the class. You go, I don't even know if they wrote dialogue for him. And so, of course, Will is brought in to Sean's office, and
I just want to get into. Sorry, I just want to mention about that. So the scene, what I love about the classroom scene, what you're saying about Robin Williams. Now, the thing that takes me out of Dead Poets Society at times is he starts doing the modern day voices and the Marlon Brando impersonations and all those, and it works for the film, but it takes me out a bit. What I love about his performance in Good Will Hunting, it is the most restrained I've ever seen Robin Williams while still being Robin Williams. Yeah. And but his jokes are natural. They're not, hey, I'm going to do an impersonation. I'm going to do a bit of my stand-up. They're not his bits of stand-up. They're character pieces. And we'll get to the bit at the moment, which I do want to talk about with his first session, but that's in that scene you get a sense of, okay, so we're going to see a very much more restrained Robin Williams. Yeah. So to move the plot along, so Will is brought to Sean's office for their first meeting, and Will is very, very standoffish because he's hoping that if he can just sort of sway enough of these guys away, the professor will just stop and will just be like, fine, you don't need therapy. Mm-hmm. And we get this amazing scene of Will looking around Sean's office and attempting to just sort of study him in a way where he's like, like, you send away for all these books or something? And I had to read. You read these books? No, those books suck, And then, of course, we get the painting, which is, he's looking at the painting. And at first, I love how Robin Williams plays this, where at first he's kind of joking along with him, where he's like, it's real with the colors. And if he goes, you know what the real bitch of it is? It's a paint by numbers. And then he starts to move into the wife discussion, and we get just this amazing moment of grabbing the throat, just, if you ever disrespect my wife again,
I end you, fucking end you. And
I
then,
love that scene because it's the first time Will realizes, oh, this guy, I can't fuck with this guy. So, like, I'm going to have to find another way to get rid of him.
It's the first time. I don't even know if at that point Will wants to get rid of him. I think it's the first time that he realizes that, because we know Will has been through a lot, even though up to this point we don't know. We know watching again that Will has been in a lot of his life has happened. This to me is the first time that he realizes, oh my god, someone else has had a pretty shitty life too. That like this is gonna piss him off. And then of course, Jacob, we're gonna let you take this away to the park bench scene.
Well, before the park bench scene, you actually get the scene that I think is very important, which is when he's in the house and when Sean's sitting in his house and he actually realizes that, you know, that's it.
Yeah,
I have to take this. I have to take this.
In a silent moment, there's a lot of great, no talking, just acting moments. There are. Yep. I love that. And then, of course, we get to the park bench scene.
And then we get to the park scene. And what I love about the park bench scene is it is just pure. It is one brilliant dialogue, brilliantly written dialogue, which is amazing. It amazes me to think that these two kids wrote this movie, and they were kids at the time. And it's amazing to think where their careers have gone now that they haven't written more. But the other thing that I love about this scene is you get a sense of the hurt and the pain behind Robin Williams, but you also get this beautiful camera shot of bringing the two actors together, and it works on so many levels. I absolutely adore that scene so much.
Yeah, I love it too, and it's such a great. Sean is not trying to be mean to Will. He's not. What he is doing is he's taking down Will in the nicest way possible, just being like, "You're a kid. You can't say anything that's really going to hurt me because you have not lived your life like I have. You have not experienced love the way I have and loss the way I have. You don't know anything." And that is where Will learns that this is going to work. So now this is where the timeline starts to get a little messy for me. So can you, what's the next important moment that happened? I believe the date with Skylar is the next important scene.
That comes a bit later. Okay. The next bit is the first session with Sean after the park bench where nothing is said. And that's when they're like, okay, so and he said nothing. Well, no, because I can't give him control. And that is something that I think is very intelligent.
Important scene.
Like, it's okay. Sean knows, you know what? I can sit here and do nothing and just.
Sean knows how to play the game. He knows
exactly.
How to play the
game. Then the next scene is, I'm pretty sure the date is, from memory, the date is next.
Yeah,
and then
really beautiful scene. I think Will, Matt Damon and Minnie Driver have great chemistry in this movie. It just feels like it just feels so genuine that when he's like, I'm going to show you the magic trick, I'm going to make all these caramels disappear. Bad. Like yeah, I love it. And then even when they're eating the burgers and she's just like, we should really just, get this first kiss out of the way. And they just, great scene. Great scene.
But then after that, you've got the next meeting where Will tries to tell the joke, and he starts telling the joke, and then when he finishes the joke, Sean's going, "Have you ever been on a plane?" He said, "No, it's a fucking joke, but it doesn't work if I don't tell it from the first perspective."
Yeah,
I think that bit's brilliant, and then Sean starts opening up about his, and then you start getting the story about the 1975 World Series and how, and he telling the story, and Will is getting so excited. He said, "I can't believe you're at that fucking game." And he goes, "No, I was having a drink with my future wife." And Will is just so stunned, bemused by that, and just like, "Wait, what?
How could you give up tickets to the game?" And I love it. It's just like, you should have seen her, Will. And you know, and then I love the moment like I didn't know he was gonna hit the homer.
I love that at the end. It's like, yeah, fuck. That bit at the end is right, but just and what
that's
friends
the first time they start to connect. That's the first moment when they start to connect with one another. And I know, speaking from experience of going to therapy, that happens a lot. The first time I went, you know, my therapist, he started to just talk about movies. Like, he learned I was a movie fan. Our first 2 sessions were just talking about movies, what movie I just saw, you know, learning stuff. He knew a lot about Jaws and telling me that, you know, Robert Shaw was a real fisherman. So that's what these guys do. They try to, not in a manipulative way, but to try to just learn who you are. And this is when Sean now knows, okay, Will's kind of an ass, but he's a good kid, and he's not totally evil.
And then you get to and then we also get to one of my favorite scenes as well, which the scene itself isn't that great because but the story behind it's fantastic. Which when Sean tells my wife used to fart in her sleep joke.
Which I believe I could be. That was
I'll get it. It was no. So the original line, I can't. I've read the original script, but the original one was something really borderline. But it was along the same thing, where it was my wife used to do this, and if you watch that scene closely, when Robin says my wife used to fart in her sleep, it cuts to Matt Damon and Matt. That's real. Matt rolls his eyes. Because you can see Matt's going, oh, fuck, here we go. Like, he's coming up with something.
You should wake the dog up.
Yeah, and then Matt pisses himself laughing. And if you watch, you can see the camera shakes.
Shaking.
Because the camera guy is pissing himself laughing as well. And
the behind the scenes said that everyone who was not needed for the camera was jumping off of this
because they were
all laughing.
Being so hard.
That's just the brilliance of Robin.
It's just one of those great behind the scenes moments that I'm so glad stayed on the camera. And it's just it's so great. But after that, then we start getting into the plot, which is where he tries to win Skylar over because he didn't call her.
He tries to win Skylar over. The professor's trying to get him to improve himself and do all the sciencey stuff. We have him working construction with Chucky, and sort of he's playing sort of 4 planes of life, trying to work them all together. And
but we also missed the one big thing. At the end of that scene, the joke scene with Robin Williams, the end of that, it's the first time Will challenges him and says, are you ever going to get remarried? And he says, no, my wife's dead. And it's hence the term remarried. And he said, no, she's dead. And it's the first time that Will challenges Sean, hey, think about your life and move on from your life. And that's when we start, okay, this connection is really growing. And then you get Lambeau, who sets up all the job interviews, and I love such a great scene of when Chucky goes to the
great Chucky moment. I just you suspect. So sorry, just pressed for time. We can't go through the entire movie because this is what happens when you get 2 huge fans of this film. We could probably sit there and talk about a scene of this movie and be the full length of my podcast. So moving on, we start to Professor Lambeau sort of starts to see Will is not giving the attention to this stuff that he should. And we get, I believe, intertwined with those scenes, we get what is part of my favorite scene, which is Chucky's speech to Will.
Yeah, Chucky's speech to Will is...
It's one of the most beautiful moments on film, and it's, again, being a part of a group of friends that is so close. I know that speech you give your friends where you see your friend is in a spot they shouldn't be, and you need to tell them, get out of here. Like, I love when he's like, listen, man, if in 20 years, you're still coming over my house watching the Pats game, I'm going to kill you. And then we, of course, get this great setup, which is, what the best part of my day is? Every day I walk up, and for 5 minutes, I think, Will got out of here. And he didn't say goodbye, nothing. He just left. That's the best part of my day. amazing setup for the ending, and then we get this great. Please talk
and
about
then
it
we
if
get,
you have anything to say.
and then, all right. So
The
there's two scenes.
Lambo. Well, I believe do we get the breakup
Okay,
with Tyler
there's
first,
three more scenes. Yeah, there's the breakup with Skylar,
which we
where
need to talk about.
which we need to talk about, which is great because he's breaking up with her because he doesn't feel like he deserves her. Which she is so much better than him. She's got a life. He's stuck here, and that's a great scene. But and then you've got that one.
You got Lambeau and Sean going at each other. I think my favorite moment from Sean in the entire movie is, when he's like, "Oh, the Fields medal. I'll go home and get your field medals." Shove the fucking Fields medal up your ass, And then just he's a good kid, and I'm not gonna see you fuck him over like you're trying to fuck me over now. And then just seeing Will and the look on both their faces, like, oh crap, we just brought him into shit that's been going on for like 20 years between us. Yeah. And then, of course, Jacob, I believe your favorite scene.
And then, okay, then my favorite scene is the it's not your fault. Now, the reason why, because this brings home what I was talking about earlier, which is hey, sometimes, stop putting so much pressure on your life. Stop thinking that you have to be this 100% wonderful, amazing person, and it's not your fault that all this shit happened to you. Now, I get that there is this idea that, oh no, well, people should grow up and everything, and I'm not saying that, hey, you shouldn't take responsibility, and that's what that scene is about. It's take responsibility for yourself, but don't blame you because your dad hit you. Don't blame yourself because...
Exactly. It's a moment of take responsibility for the stuff you have to take responsibility for. It was not your fault that your parents abandoned you. It was not your fault that you had a piece of shit, father. That was not your fault. And it's such a beautiful moment when at first Will is so pushing back to her. He's like, no, not you, Sean. Don't you do this to me, and just push it. And then when Matt Damon goes into Robin Williams' arm and just starts crying, and just because I've had these moments too where I've just felt like I've had these moments with my mom where I felt like I fucked up in school or in something, and it's just the same, like, take a breath. It's not your fault. This was, it sucks, but it's, oh my God, this movie is so goddamn good. So then we move into Will's gonna get a job. He's gone in for the interview.
Yeah. So
he's
we
gonna
don't,
get the,
yeah.
Well, because Skylar is gone.
Skylar's gone.
He's going to get the job. His last meeting with Sean is there, and we see that Sean has been affected by Will as well, because he's going to go back and he's going to do what he used to do, which is help soldiers with PTSD. So, which is an amazing. If you want to talk about that scene,
it's just a. Well, you don't see the interview. It's just him comes in and says, "Hey, I got a job." The best friends get in the car, which, hey guys, can I get a car for my 21st? For 5 years ago. But, and then so at the end of that scene, Sean's, hey, I'll see you when I see you. And then it's all set up.
Me, here you go, just this hug, just this real embrace. And I love how you compare back to their first meeting ended with Sean about to rip out Will's throat, and their last meeting ends with two true friends who were both affected by this. And then, of course, we get Will in the car, dropping the letter off at Sean's office. Not at his office, at his house. And then we get what is the end bit, and probably my favorite moment in the entire movie. And I love Ben Affleck. He's one of my favorite actors. This to me is his best acting moment, and he does not have a line of let me explain. He does not have a line of dialogue. In facial expressions, he runs the gambit of emotions in this, which is walks up there, knocks on the door, looks in the window, and then just in a couple of looks is, holy shit, my best friend left. He left without saying goodbye, and then the smile of, He left without saying goodbye. He finally got out of this bucket. And then walking, you know, he's not there.
Yeah.
It's just
And
beautiful
then
because you
Casey
can
gets
tell
into the
how
front of the car.
you can tell how happy Chucky is at that moment of like, it sucks that my friend is gone, but God, I'm so damn happy that he's gone because he's finally done what I've wanted him to do for years.
Yeah. But see, the thing that I actually don't think that's a good scene for Ben Affleck. I think that's kind of the weakest. I think it's an awesome scene for the character, but I think the facial expression's really goofy. And I think I think it's okay, that doesn't really work as well as it should.
Well, Jacob, you're welcome to your wrong opinion.
But the
Then,
next
of course,
bit is
the reading of the letter, going through figuring out that he's going out to find Skylar, and it ends with one of the greatest ad-lib lines I think Matt Damon and Ben Affleck will ever say, which is, guess the end of the letter. If they ask, tell them I went to see about a girl. Some bitch.
and then Robin Williams, Robin Williams ad-libbed that. But
yep.
yeah,
And he only ad-libbed that every other take. He just walked away and shut the door. One take, he went, "Some bitch stole my line," and then we're like, that's what Sean would say. And we close, and we get a semi-open ending of, does he find Skylar? Do they reconcile? What happens to Chuck? What happens to Will? We don't know, of course, until we get to Go Will Hunting 2, hunting season. That's a it's on Bobby. So yeah, we're at the end of the film. So Jacob, what are your final thoughts on this movie?
Look, it's my all-time favorite film. It changed who I am as a moviegoer. It changed how I perceive film and how I enjoy movies. It's funny because I watched this, and then the next day I saw Transformers 2, which is my most hated film of all time. So
I can tell why. Talking about a downgrade.
I have a feeling that this is so. In 2 days, I saw both ends of the spectrum. So, like after this, look, I'm the first to admit, Good Will Hunting is not the greatest film ever made. After I saw Good Will Hunting, I saw The Godfather, I saw Shawshank, I saw all of the all-time greats, but it all comes back to Good Will Hunting for me, which is my all-time favorite film.
Listen, this movie, I don't care what people say. This movie should have won the Oscar. Titanic is fine, but it does not hit me emotionally like this film does. I'm sorry if you're a fan of Titanic. I'm not. But my final this is in my top 30 favorite films of all time, and is a movie that is endlessly rewatchable. It is a movie that the more you watch it, the more you pick up on the little bits and pieces that they have there. I mean, this was written by a bunch of like, how old did they had to be like 24, 25 when they wrote this?
They were younger than I reckon I am right now. So I'm 24. So
they were probably 23, 24, and they literally wrote this movie just because as young actors are like, well, we should really just write a movie to show off our acting abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And look at what happened. So this an amazing movie, and I want to thank my amazing guest for coming on and talking on what I think is going to be my longest episode to date, but it's okay, because this is what happens when you get two people who love a movie like this.
Yeah.
So, Jacob,
sorry.
Is there anything you want to plug?
Make sure that you watch along on our watch-alongs every Saturday at 8:30. We will pick a movie and watch along. Otherwise, join us there. Yeah, then that's my show each week here on Take 3. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, so just follow along if you're interested in more of my movie thoughts.
And for me, as always, you guys can find me at Kearns_Matthew on Twitter, MattMoves611 on YouTube, and right here hosting the Movie Fandom show every other Saturday. All right. So again, thank you guys for watching this episode, and don't forget to keep loving movies. See you around.